Hey gang, welcome back to Mark's 60 Plus Fitness Journey. Okay, today I want to talk about the current fitness program that this 63-year-old man is using. And previously I've talked about this in bits and pieces and snippets. I want to bring it together in one cohesive overarching view. It's an abstract overview of what I'm doing right now for my fitness program. So let me show it to you. Okay, so let's talk about my strength and fitness program. This is something I've cobbled together to use for me at age 63, and I think it's working very well. So I just want to talk about it, give you a little high-level overview of this particular program. Four main components to this. Firstly, I want to maintain and hopefully increase muscle mass and strength. And I actually believe, I know that this is actually working. I'm progressing in muscle and strength, albeit incrementally, but it's still progress. That's all I can really expect at 63. The second component is the actual fitness component of this, and I'm going to break that into aerobic and anaerobic fitness. We'll talk about that a little bit. Of course, the recovery aspect, something I've always been a little lax with, but I've been much better about lately. I'll talk about that a little bit more. And the fourth component for me is controlling body fat and staying lean. And I'll talk about how I'm going about trying to take care of that for me. So let's dive into these a little bit. Let's get into the weeds a little bit more deeply on each one of these. Okay, item one, increasing muscle mass and strength. How am I doing that? Well, I'm using resistance training, weightlifting, lifting weights. That's my tool for doing this. And that currently involves a low volume, high intensity approach. I've recently lowered my workout volume quite a bit, by 50% or more, less work, but that work is at a higher intensity level. I've done some videos about this recently, and I will link them in the description so you can check them out for a little more detail. I don't want to get into too much detail right now because I don't want this to be an hour long. Okay, I'm continuing. This particular resistance training program I'm on now is a 4-day workout split with a 5th day as recovery. The 5th day recovery, recuperation, very important, vital, just as vital as the actual previous 4 days of working out. And I've included a progressive overload aspect here to take care of the actual strength part of this. You're probably familiar, but if you're not, a progressive overload is the idea of doing a particular exercise, say for 3 sets of 5 reps at a given weight. When you successfully do those 3 sets of 5 reps at that weight, you move the weight up, thus progressively overloading, increasing strength. And also very important here in this resistance training, as part of the high intensity aspect of this resistance training, it's my HIIT, high intensity training, anaerobic portion of my fitness. Anaerobic is short bursts of high intensity exercise or activity, followed by periods of rest and recovery. And what the body does here, it uses glycogen and glucose for fuel as opposed to fat. You're going to use glycogen and glucose for fuel. So these short bursts are only sustainable for a short period because that particular glycogen and glucose fuel source is limited. Okay? So that's item one. Let's move on to item two of this workout program. Okay, aerobic fitness. Now this is the second component to the fitness module. We just talked about anaerobic. Now aerobic is something more along the lines of like walking, biking, to a degree biking. You can make biking anaerobic as well, but we want to keep this at a low impact, low heart rate, low breathing rate type of activity, but for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour. I like to walk. I love to walk. I've done many videos on that as well. You're probably tired of hearing that. But that particular, say walking for example, that anaerobic activity uses fats for fuel. Okay, and that plays into controlling my body fat, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. And importantly here, I do this walk in the morning in a fasted state. We'll talk about that intermittent fasting in a second too as well, but I do this in a fasted state. And what that means is my glycogen stores are at a very low level. Sorry about cutting that period off there, but they're at a very low level after the fasting period overnight for me. So what the body does is it metabolizes fat to use for fuel for this aerobic exercise, in this case walking. So that's my aerobic and anaerobic fitness aspect for module 2. So let's move on to module 3. Okay, I mentioned earlier, this is recovery. Something I mentioned earlier, I wasn't very good about this, but I've been very good about this lately, very diligent. My 5th day of recovery is a workout day for me, although it's not an actual workout day, but it counts. And if I don't successfully stay inactive, I consider it a fail. As I mentioned, it's like a 50% reduced volume in what I did like last year this time. Way fewer sets, but at a much higher intensity. RPE level of 9 or 10. RPE meaning rate of perceived effort. 9 or 10 meaning you pretty much are at you can't do another rep. That degree of intensity. But the key to that is the reduced volume. So recovery, reduce volume, rest day, and get enough sleep. I tell you what, if I'm not good at anything, I am the king of sleep. I cover that hard. I get that times 2. But sleep is very important. If you're sleep deprived, all of this stuff is way more difficult. Okay, let's move on to the final component, controlling body fat. Okay, my goal here is to maintain 14% or less body fat. I just did a body composition analysis a couple of weeks ago, and I was at 14%. I'm going to continue to do these periodically just to see if that machine I use is consistent. It's called an in-body machine. It's one of those impedance electrical type approaches. I'm going to consider that as somewhat accurate. But anyway, I want to control my body fat around 14% or less. I think that's realistic, 14. I really would like to get down to 12, but we'll stick with 14 as a goal. And how am I doing this as well? Intermittent fasting. I've talked about intermittent fasting. I think intermittent fasting is an awesome way for me to control my eating. This is more or less a timed eating approach, and for me it works well. What I generally have is a 16-hour fasting window and an 8-hour eating window. So if I stop eating, let's say at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, which I do quite often, I don't eat again until 8 o'clock the next morning. So, 16-hour window. And for me, once I got used to that, it's not that hard. And when you wake up in the morning in that fasted state, your glycogen stores are low. And then the fasted walk I do in the morning, I get double benefits out of that. It does burn fat. I know for a fact I've lost some body fat doing this in the last 8 or 10 weeks. So the intermittent fasting with the walking, I love it. Now, I don't have a calorie restriction at all. I eat pretty much all I want. It's very clean eating. I don't eat a lot of junk. But I do kind of stick with the macros of 35% protein, 20% fat, 45% carbs, somewhere in that area. Sometimes the protein's higher, carbs are lower. But that's a general approximation of my macro eating habit right there for now. Okay, so there you go. That's a high level synopsis of my strength and fitness program. If you'd like more details on this, let me know. I can do videos on anything specific here. I'd like to hear what you guys are doing, what your complete program is. We'd love to hear it. Let me know what you think about this. I appreciate you hanging out with me for, 10 minutes or so, however long this is. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Hit that like button. Tell your friends. Share this video. Hit that notification bell. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing. Love to have you here. So with that, I'll wrap it up and say, till next time, go get 'em. Mark out.